Okay, it looks like we have a pretty good crowd. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. First, I'd like to thank Jonah for joining us. If we haven't met, I'm Dottie Head. I'm the Director of Membership and Communications for Atlanta Audubon. This would have been our free monthly meeting at Manuel's Tavern, but COVID has had other ideas, so we've taken our monthly meetings online. We really appreciate Jonah embracing the technology and doing this meeting for us. Just a couple of hours ago, we had a Birding by Ear Part 1 with Georgianne Schmalls, and we'll be offering Part 2 of Birding by Ear on July the 12th. So if you'd like to learn how to ID birds by their calls, this is an outstanding workshop to do that. You can register on our website. We are also co-hosting an event on Wednesday, August 19th with Eagle Eye Bookshop in Decatur. This will also be a webinar, and we're hosting David Sibley, author and illustrator of the Sibley Field Guide to Birds and the newly released New York Times bestseller, What It's Like to Be a Bird. So that's another book event, and you can purchase the book on the website, on our website when you register if you would like, or you can just attend the event and hear him talk about his illustrations. If you're enjoying all this free content that Atlanta Audubon's been offering during COVID, we encourage you to become a member or to make a donation on our website. Finally, we have got all of you are on mute and your pictures are hidden, but if you have any questions, please enter them in the Q&A box or in the chat box. Make your questions available to all attendees and panelists so everybody can see them, and we'll do our best to get you an answer for them. So now I'm going to introduce Jonah. Jonah McDonald is an Atlanta writer, storyteller, historian, and naturalist. His new book, Secret Atlanta, A Guide to the Weird, Wonderful, and Obscure, contains 90 short stories about unusual and forgotten places in Atlanta. He is also author of the popular guidebook, Hiking Atlanta's Hidden Forests, In Town and Out. And I can attest that that's a great book. He also serves as a DeKalb County park naturalist at Mason Mill Park, so you may have seen him out and about. Jonah's only been an avid birder for about a year, but he loves to explore the city on bicycle, canoe, and foot, and he believes there's a new story to learn and tell around every bend. When he's not already on an adventure, Jonah loves finding a new one. So we hope you're inspired by his talk. And without further ado, I introduce Jonah McDonald.
Great, thanks, Dottie. And hi, everybody. I must say I've done several of these online book talk webinar things, and it's the strangest thing to be speaking to a crowd, and I cannot tell if you guys care one bit. But because you're birders, I know you care. Let's see. What I'm going to talk to you about today is not directly about birds, but what I hope I'm going to do is give you some inspiration on trying out some new places where you can go birding. As Dottie said, I really only got into birding about a year ago, but I want to tell you how I got into writing the kind of books that I've now written. So about 6 or 7 years ago, I was leading outdoors adventures, primarily for independent schools in the Atlanta area, also for families and adults. And I had this idea that there was only one real nature, and that real nature was up in the mountains, the Appalachians, the Blue Ridge. And it came from the fact that when I was in my early 20s, I did a through hike, a 2,000-mile hike from Maine all the way down to Georgia on the Appalachian Trail. And so I had this idea that true adventure was something that grandiose, that huge. So every time I took a group out to the forest, I knew that I had to take them to something extreme and big and dramatic. And so what I found myself doing was in a school bus with 25 second graders, driving 2.5 hours to get to quote unquote real nature with 25 children in a school bus. Then I'd hustle them out of the bus. We'd see nature for 2 hours, and then I'd get them back on the bus and drive 2.5 hours back to Atlanta. And I started realizing there's got to be a better way. Why am I wasting 5 hours of these kids' day in a bus just to give them 2 hours of nature? So I started looking around for the places that were maybe less known, but really felt like you were in the mountains, really felt like you were in the forest. And lo and behold, I found dozens, in fact, over 90 places, all in the metro area that you could go on an honest to goodness hike in the woods, but kind of in our neighborhoods. I think this is something that's really unique to Atlanta. And I just started looking around, and all the guidebooks that were out there about hiking in Atlanta were really about hikes you can get to from Atlanta. There was a little bit of information about the actual metro area, but for the most part, it was how to drive from Atlanta, exactly what I had been doing. So I thought, well, I guess writing a book is what I'm going to be doing. And I set out on it, and ended up publishing Hiking Atlanta's Hidden Forests, in town and out. It's a list of 60 different hikes you can go on that are all within a 30-mile drive of downtown, like the Gold Dome, the downtown Atlanta. And that book, which came out in 2014, has become quite a popular guidebook. And it's been really fun to me, because now I'll just be in a location and somebody will start talking about this new trail they just found. Jonah, I've got to show you this guidebook. And they'll pull it out, and I'll say, well, actually, that is, I wrote that. And it's a big joy to me to get to help folks see the city through a different lens. So I'm going to pull up my little slides here so I can show you some pictures, and I'm going to tell you some stories. But so bear with me for a second while I share my screen. And let's see, press play. And so when I talk to people, hopefully you can still see my face in the corner here. When I talk to people about that I'm a hiking guidebook author, the first thing they say is, oh, have you heard of this place? It's called Kennesaw Mountain. And I nod my head and I say, yes, I've heard of Kennesaw Mountain. Or they say, oh, but have you heard of Stone Mountain? Yeah, yes, I've definitely heard of Stone Mountain. Or they say, have you heard of Sweetwater Creek State Park? And I kind of consider those the big three of hiking in Atlanta. And as those of you know who've ever walked there or gone birding there, if you go out on a beautiful Saturday afternoon at Sweetwater Creek, you hike the red trail to these ruins that you see right here, you're going to see 1,000 people out on those trails. Even more if you go to Stone Mountain or Kennesaw Mountain. And what I want Hiking in Atlanta's Hidden Forest to do is to show us those kind of under the radar places that are great for hiking, are great for birding, are great for looking at trees, connecting with nature in our own backyard. And so this is the cover of the book right here, and it's still out and going strong. It's sold multiple thousands of copies now, and if you don't have a copy, I do invite you to get one, and those are also available on secretatlanta.com, which is my website, along with my new book. So to transition, so why am I doing a talk at a group of fellow birders about a book called Secret Atlanta? Well, I think that similarly to how people say there are the big three trails in Atlanta, Kennesaw, Stone Mountain, and Sweetwater Creek, I think people think of Atlanta as also having kind of a big three of tourism. So for instance, when people think of Atlanta, they might think of Coca-Cola. When people think of Atlanta, they think of Dr. King and his legacy. I think people think of the Centennial Olympics. But there's so much more about Atlanta. There's so much more that stories that may not be told, places that you may not have known to go, and sometimes locations that are famous, that have stories that you may not have heard. So that's how I got into writing Secret Atlanta, a guide to the weird, wonderful, and obscure. You may recognize a few things on the cover here. In the background there, that's the Monastery of the Holy Spirit in Conyers. The kind of amazing white stone architecture there is the BAPS temple in Lilburn. And the emu that you see here lives right next to the Lake Claire Land Trust. And then at the very top, those strange sculptures are part of an art installation at Druid Hill, just around the corner from the park I now work at Mason Mill. So I started compiling all these stories because I just love scavenger hunts. And honestly, I think that as birders, that's part of what we do, right? Is that we know that we're always going to see a eastern towhee whenever we walk around, right? but we're always keeping our eye out for that bird that may not have been in our neighborhood just last week, or maybe that we just missed. And for me in my neighborhood, there's a family of red-headed woodpeckers that live in a dead tree around the corner from my house. So I always know I can go to the dead tree to find the red-headed woodpeckers, but it's much more fun to walk around the neighborhood and see if I find them feeding or out and about in another location. And so this idea of a scavenger hunt, to me, got me really excited about writing Secret Atlanta. But then I started thinking a little bit more philosophically about our secrets in our city. You know, secrets are kind of meant to divide us, right? Like, I have my secret and I'm not telling you. And we silo ourselves in Atlanta, I believe. We stay in our little nook and cranny of the city. We hang out with the people that we're used to. We go to the locations that we're used to. And my secret, the thing I think is my own secret, may truly be a secret to a person across town from me. Just as something that they think is part of their everyday life, their secret, well, it's a secret to me. And so I think that in some ways, by telling stories and getting these quote unquote secrets out there can bring us together. So the thing that is your everyday stomping grounds in your neighborhood, I may not know about. And same for me. And if we can share those stories with each other, I believe that brings us together. How many times have you been invited by a friend of yours who loves birding, and they bring you to a new spot that you'd never been to? It not only makes you excited to get to go to that new location, but I think it also makes you feel closer to that person, that they've shared that story and that secret with you. So that's really what I feel like this book is about, and in many ways is what Hiking Atlanta's Hidden Forest is about. So now I've got to admit something to you guys. I had this idea when Hiking Atlanta's Hidden Forest first came out that I was going to fool the world. Like, people would be say, wow, all these trails I'd never heard of. Well, and that did happen. But one of my first book talks 5-6 years ago now was at the monthly meeting of the Audubon Society. And I came in and I thought to myself, I am going to fool all these birders. They're not going to know any of these spots. And I walked in and I said, have you guys heard of the Newman Wetland Center? No one's heard of this place. And you know what? All the birders just laughed at me and they said, we already know about Newman Wetland Center. Because birders know a lot about Atlanta. And also that Newman is just a really fabulous place. Not just the Newman Wetland Center, but also every once in a while you get to go on a tour of the Clayton County Water Authority's constructed wetlands. Audubon partners with them, I think, pretty regularly. If you get to go on one of those, y'all, it's totally worth it. If you don't get to go on one, just coming to the Wetland Center here, it's honestly, I mean, from my house, I live in the Decatur area. It only takes me about 35 minutes to get there. And it's pretty amazing. So, but again, birders looked at me and like, oh yeah, I know that place. And then at the time, Joy Carter was the president of Audubon Society. And when I walked in, I didn't know this, but I said, what about this other place you may never have been to, Constitution Lakes? And Joy's like in the front row saying, oh yeah, I like made that place. She didn't make that place, but you know what I mean. Constitution Lakes, of course, is another amazing place for birding, just around the corner from many of our homes. And I thought I was going to be sharing something new with the birding community. But in fact, that's one of the things I love about Audubon and about birders is that we already are kind of keyed in on these less off the beaten path, less known places. So today, though, I'm not going to fool every one of you. I'm not going to get in thinking that I'm going to give you something completely brand new, but I hope you come away with some ideas on ways that you can get out, see our city through a different lens, hear some stories from maybe a community that you're not typically part of, and find ways to tie birding into all of it. So I'll start with a couple trails that I don't think are quite as much on the radar screen of folks that bird. And again, you're going to know some of these places, but I'm going to just give you these places in case you want to jot them down, and maybe it can give you an idea. Because I don't know about you, but I oftentimes go back to the same place over and over and over again. with my binoculars. And part of the reason for that is because I gain community with the birds. Like, I know that red-headed woodpecker's nest that I spoke of earlier. And so I go and I visit the family. They're my family in a sense. So it's really good to go to the same place over and over, but it's also good to break out of our routine. So, so have any of you ventured down to Peachtree City? Some of you may live in Peachtree City. For me, it's one of the longer drives for me in the metro area. Line Creek Nature Area is, again, it's one of these edge areas where the birds love. There's a beautiful creek here, and I highly recommend it as a spot to check out if you haven't been there. Another one, and this is right next to the Gwinnett Place Mall. And one of the reasons I like this place for birding, it's called McDaniel Farm Park. It's 150 acres. So it's a large area, which means that, and because it's close to car dealerships, a mall, all that kind of stuff, this is the place for wildlife in this area. It's accessible, much of it is. And that's something that we always have to be aware of, is maybe you have a stroller with you. Maybe you are not as able to walk a long distance on a rough trail. So McDaniel Farm Park does have these accessible trails. And as you see, being a former farm, it has both woodland forest area, but also this kind of open field area. So you're going to see different species. It also has a couple areas of water. So another good habitat. And if you haven't been to McDaniel Farm, maybe break out your routine and try this one. Another one that I love is Heritage Park. This is right near the Silver Comet Trail. So it's in Mableton, just outside the perimeter. And it has a beautiful waterfall, which you see right here below, but it has both a boardwalk area through a wetland along Nickajack Creek, and also this kind of gorgeous creek area. And it's a great hike in and of itself, plus it's real connected to the Silver Comet. So you can either park in a parking lot, or you could even bicycle in if you wanted to do that. And then, of course, the place that most of us know is Davidson-Arabia Mountain Nature Preserve. But the thing I don't think we always think about is it as a destination for birding. Because we think about this mountain as a monadnock, a stone mountain, similar to the Stone Mountain. But there are thousands of acres in this nature preserve. It's all in DeKalb County. It's a DeKalb County park, so it's our land. And there are many, many different ecological zones and habitats all within the acreage. So when you go, the reason I put this up here is I know many of you have already gone there, but try going to one of the alternative areas at this park. So take the Cascade Trail, or take the Wilburn Farm Loop, take the Vaughters Farm Loop, or maybe take the Forest or Mile Rock Trail, and you might see some birds that you wouldn't necessarily see on top of the mountain. Go to the top of the mountain too, it's really nice, but it's not the only place. All right, poof, I'm talking my ear off. Let me take a little drink here. I'm talking my ear off, I'm talking your ear off. So let me transition away from some trails and some places you might go for birding. I'm here to talk about Secret Atlanta today. I'm an author of a new book. It only came out the book came out right in the middle of the pandemic, so I haven't actually been able to in person talk to anybody about this book. But I would like to introduce it to you. I'm really excited about it, and I'm really proud of it. And I do think it connects to birds. The title of this was, what do they call it? Birds Trail, no, I called it Atlanta's Secrets, Trails, and Birds. So what I've tried to do is create some itineraries that I think give you something really fun to do, a scavenger hunt per se, and opportunities for birding, which is what we're here for, right? So the number one thing that I want you to know about Secret Atlanta is that, as I mentioned earlier, one person's everyday thing may be somebody else's surprising secret. And so the things you're going to find inside Secret Atlanta are places like this. Just an intersection in a nice residential neighborhood here at Harland Road and T Road. But the story that is hidden here is that this is the location of what many people called well, either the Harland Road Barricade or the Atlanta-Berlin Wall. And this is a lesser known story of the civil rights movement in Atlanta, where as an African-American physician moved into this neighborhood, white neighbors petitioned the mayor to block off their streets so no more African-American families could move into the neighborhood. And the mayor did. Mayor Alvin Allen Jr. actually built a barricade, closed off these streets in order to stop the free movement of Black families moving into this neighborhood. This barricade became international news, and some headlines began calling it the Atlanta-Berlin Wall. And the mayor didn't necessarily change his mind about why he did it, but he was embarrassed by the international press. And after much protesting, he did remove the barrier. And so that's one of the stories that I tell in this book. So you'll find that kind of thing, but you'll also find kind of head scratchers, unusual things like this, Barbie Beach. So this is just south of town, and there's a couple who built a sandy beach in their front yard, and they put a whole bunch of Barbie dolls that they found at a Goodwill in their front yard and kind of set them up in a diorama like this. And every so often they change the diorama up. They've done, themed, like a Halloween themed diorama, or like a Pride Festival like it is now diorama. And it's a weird, unusual thing. So that's where you get to the weird and wonderful of the book. Another thing that you may have seen at Hartsfield-Jackson Airport, did you know that there is a giant corn airplane sculpture hanging from the ceiling? Well, in the E-gates, you have a different art installation at every gate. And I know we're not doing a lot of traveling now because of the COVID crisis, but when you get to go back to Hartsfield-Jackson, walk yourself through the E-gates, and you're going to find some really, really neat artwork, and also some weird stuff like this. This piece is called the Concorde, like the Concorde, the supersonic airliner. So this is the Concorde, yes, so go find it. Then you're also going to find stories in the book about places that you already know, like Centennial Olympic Park. But do you know the story of the guy who bought a stone to ask his girlfriend to marry him? Well, there's a whole story behind that, and I'll let you read the book to find out more about that one. So there's a lot of these stories where a famous place, but maybe something you don't know about that famous place. And then some of the stuff is just, things I love. Like showing off my bald head there, right? Hugging trees, that's what I mean. Hugging trees is what I love. And this is the largest living thing in Atlanta. It's a cherry bark oak, and it is the state champion cherry bark oak tree. It's the largest tree in Atlanta, and it's just south of where Turner Field, what used to be Turner Field, now it's GSU Stadium, Georgia State Stadium. So that's the kind of stuff that that you'll find in the book, and hopefully that kind of wets your whistle for some more stories. But how does a birder use Secret Atlanta? Well, what I do, and I now consider myself a birder, and so I always have binoculars with me. I swear I have them right next to me. I was going to pull them out, but I don't know where they are in this room. But how does a birder use Secret Atlanta? Well, what I do is I figure out a quote unquote secret spot that I want to visit. And then I figure out how to turn it also into a birding trip. I suspect you've done that before too, right? You're like, well, my family's already going on vacation here. Where can I go birding? Of course, all of this becomes way more complicated because we're in the middle of a pandemic. So traveling and being a tourist, visiting the city, going to places is so much harder because we're trying to keep social distance, and we're trying not to make this thing worse. At least I hope we are. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some possible itineraries that you might enjoy that both give you some interesting secret stories about Atlanta. some cool places to bird, but places that are, I think, pretty legitimate to go to during these COVID times that we're in. So yeah, here we go. Let's see, and yeah, we're doing good on time. All right, perfect. So one of the things you could do, and some of these things you may have seen before, but hopefully I'll maybe give you a different viewpoint to look at it through. So one of the places that I just love to go is down to what used to be called Georgia Perimeter College and is now called Georgia State University's Decatur campus. There's the GSU Native Plant Botanical Garden. It was originally started by Professor George Sanko, who's no longer with us, but he also planted his personal collection of ferns. And I haven't 100% confirmed this, but from a couple of sources stated it's likely the largest single collection of ferns in the United States. And it's right here in DeKalb County, right in the metro area, on the GSU campus there, the GSU Decatur campus off Panthersville Road. And it is just a cool place to go. The Native Plant Botanical Garden, which is right next to it, is also amazing. So go there and walk around. It's a great place to keep your binoculars and take a look out for birds. And also right next to it is one of the trailheads for the Michelle Obama Path Trail, which goes along the general corridor of the South River. And if you haven't walked on that path trail, many of us think about going to the East Side Beltline, and you know how crazy that is with, hundreds of people and very few mask users and stuff like that. But the Michelle Obama Trail is beautiful. It's a nature walk. It's accessible, and it's really pretty. So combine those things, and then maybe you'll be able to put together a really cool birding trip and also get to see the Ferns of the World Garden. So the next one is definitely a birding destination already. But this is something that you can do when you go to this place and learn a story that you may not have heard before. So many of you have gone to the Decatur Cemetery. In fact, I was talking with a friend on the phone the other day, and I was sitting in the Decatur Cemetery, and my friend said, oh, hey, I think I know where you're sitting. Are you sitting in that area? It's kind of a memorial garden to for where people scattered their ashes. I was like, yeah, that's where I'm sitting. He's like, well, just walk down just a little bit and then look up into the snag, the dead tree that's right over there, and you'll find a red-headed woodpecker nest. And then look in the water oak just below you, and you're going to find some blue jays that are nesting there too. And lo and behold, that's exactly what I found. So I know that many birders go to the Decatur Cemetery on birding trips, but you may not have looked into some of the history of it. And these two graves, I'll give you a little snippet of it, but the man on the left here, Robert Alston, was killed in a duel in the state capitol by Edward Cox. And their gravestones are virtually right next to each other today. So that's a story right there. And it means that it's not only a birding trip at the Decatur Cemetery, again, a place that many of us love to go, but also it's a place that you can learn some interesting history. So you can start by reading the story that I tell in Secret Atlanta, and then also the Decatur Cemetery has a printable little brochure that tells other historical tidbits from the cemetery that you can also pick up. All right, next here. This is a spot that I love to go, but it's a park that not so many people go to. This is Fort Peachtree Park. It's a City of Atlanta park, and it's right at the confluence of the Chattahoochee River, which you see down at the bottom there, and Peachtree Creek, which is of course one of the major watersheds of Atlanta. And this park is not only a beautiful park and a great place to go birding right along the river and the creek, two riparian corridors, which are of course good for birding, but also it's the first peach tree. Fort Peachtree was originally the location of a Cherokee and sometimes Creek, it went back and forth, village that called Standing Peachtree. And so the origination of this Atlanta Peachtree thing with, how many roads we have that all have Peachtree in the name of it, all originates here. And you can learn a little bit more about that origination story in my book, and then go to this really cool place for a stroll and a spot by both a river and a major creek. All right. I've already mentioned, I think I've already mentioned this next one. So I think I pre-told this story, so we can just flip through it. Again, this is Mount Arabia. And so right now, even during the pandemic, if you go walk Stone Mountain, you're going to be in a huge crowd of people. And there are some off the beaten path places at Stone Mountain Park that are actually really great for birding. There's a trail called the Songbird Trail that's an off the beaten path place and contains a couple different ecological habitat zones so that you can go check that out. It's also a place where dogs are not allowed. So, that's one of the issues that we oftentimes have with going to our parks, is that people love walking their dogs. Not so great when you're trying to, get a bird in your sight. But the Songbird Trail is no dogs allowed. So that's at Stone Mountain. But again, this is Arabia Mountain. And what I recommend you do is not just go to the top of the mountain, like right here, but also check out the alternative trails all around the nature preserve, and find one that less people are on and that might have some habitat areas that can bring you to different birding than you would at the top of the mountain. This next one's a little bit more somber. I don't know if you can read that picture, but it says the Trail of Tears. And one of the American tragedies, and also the tragedies of Georgia, is the Indian Removal Act, I believe 1836, in which primarily the Cherokee Indians and any Native person that was living here was required to leave their home. And the city of Roswell has a park right along the river. It's called Riverside Park. And that park is mostly known because there's an amphitheater there and a playground. But there is walking paths along the river. Again, the Chattahoochee is a great place to see some waterfowl and many other species of bird. And so if you're looking to walk along the river, but also looking to hear a story that really we should be lifting up more, Roswell has put up this Trail of Tears memorial walk, in which they put these really large boulders along the trail. And then each of them has an interpretive sign, and you can start at the beginning. And it's about 3/4 of a mile walk from start to finish. You're along the river much of the time, as you can see in this picture, but you're also learning a history that we probably remember from our school books, but we should really read more about. And go birding. And let's see, the next thing I'm going to recommend is this little alleyway right here. In the Druid Hills neighborhood, which is very close to Emory University. It was a neighborhood originally envisioned by Frederick Law Olmsted, and then using inspiration from his beliefs about landscape architecture, was built. And one of the things that they built were these little alleyways that connected the streets with each other. There was one road that had a streetcar that ran on it. And so instead of having to walk all the way around the block, they built these bywalks, these little alleyways between, and they're still standing. They're not marked, but somebody in the know can go on a stroll through the beautiful Druid Hills neighborhood, go see the house where Driving Miss Daisy was filmed, walk down these beautiful tree-lined streets, and visit the bywalks. Druid Hills is also not super well known for this, but it's a very cool place to go birding, is they also have a lot of pocket parks. So tiny little parks that are just tucked into the neighborhood. And there's, I think, 6 or 7 or maybe even 8 of them, all tucked around the neighborhood. And so what a fun day it would be to go find the bywalks and walk through these secret passageways through this neighborhood, this kind of upscale, beautiful neighborhood, and then go to these pocket parks and see what birds you'll find along Peavine Creek or along the other waterways. And finally, I'm going to recommend that you stay off the East Side Beltline for now. But if you haven't been there, this is a new greenway. It's called the Proctor Creek Greenway, and it's right along what used to be a creek that was a healthy riparian area that churches would even do full immersion baptisms in the creek waters. And then it became horribly polluted. But organizations like the West Atlanta Watershed Alliance and others have been cleaning up this creek, and now there is this gorgeous greenway that runs along the banks of Proctor Creek Greenway. Right now it's about 3.5 miles, great for a bike ride, great for a stroll, great for birding, and it's also a great place that you're not going to see the numbers of people that you will on the East Side Beltline and even on the West Side Beltline. I was out with my family just the other day, and we only passed three or four families, and we did a whole 3-mile bike ride together. So if you're looking for a place that feels like the Beltline, but is not as crowded and is also along a great waterway that's really key for birding, this is a good place to go. Really, I really do recommend it. It's one of my favorite places at the moment. All right, so I'm gonna take another breath. Take another little drink of water here. We're starting to wrap up here. But I figured the last thing I'd kind of tip you off on is something that's super close to my heart and close to my home. Go check out some urban graffiti. Go to Krog Tunnel or Cabbagetown. You can see some really, really cool urban art there. Or go to Mason Mill Park, where there are these ruins from the old Decatur Waterworks, where Decatur used to get all of its water supply from about 1907 to about 1945. Decatur got all of its water from Burnt Fork Creek. And after the waterworks were closed down, the buildings and the structures were all left ruined, overgrown with plants, and then graffiti artists came in. And you'll find some amazing graffiti. And this place, I think, is particularly cool for graffiti because it's this combination of nature and urban kind of all mixed together. But do you notice that guy, that park ranger who's standing in the middle of that group of walkers? Yeah, that's me. I happen to now be the park ranger at Mason Mill Park. I work for DeKalb County now as my official title is park naturalist. But every time I tell somebody I'm a naturalist, they think I walk around in the woods naked. So I just tell them I'm a park ranger. So this is me with this kind of cool giraffe graffiti piece right here. And the reason why I'm recommending this as a location is partially because, you know, this is my park. It's the place I love more than anything. And plus you can come walk with me sometime. We're not doing public programs now, but you know, someday when this public health crisis changes, we'll have the opportunity to walk in person again, and we'll do you come on a nature walk with me. I'm not a master birder. I don't consider myself an expert birder, but the thing I know is where to find the birds in this park. So I'll oftentimes bring in folks like Adam Betchuel's led a walk with me there, and Joy Carter's led a walk with me there. I'm trying to think of other names of folks. I could drop lots of names. We're not going to do that right now. But the other thing that's really awesome about Mason Mill is that the Central DeKalb Senior Center is there. And longtime Audubon person, David Kiekenmeister, is kind of the birder in residence at Mason Mill Park. And he's the one that's really been teaching me. He brought me out on the Christmas bird count with him this year, and we went around and did a zone together. And I've been just soaking up as much knowledge as I can from him. You talk about birding by ear. That David knows his birding by ear. So I'm really trying to pick that up. I now know drink your tea and the squeaky toy, and I'm learning more. Mason Mill is not as widely known by birders as a place like Clyde Shepherd Nature Preserve, right? Which is just around the corner from it. But this is an excellent place. And right now there's a couple families of barred owls that are hanging out there. So if you want to see barred owls, it's a cool place to go. There's not only the South Peachtree Creek Trail, which is a path trail there, but also a whole network of soft surface trails. So you can do kind of whatever scale of hiking and birding you want to do there. Anyway, you're invited to come to my place. I am not allowed to go to work right now because of sheltering in place, but soon I'll be back at the park, and hope, say hi to me and say, Jonah, you didn't see me at that webinar, but I saw you, and then introduce yourself to me and teach me what you know, because that's the way we learn more about nature and about birding, is by teaching each other. So let's see, Dottie, I think I'm going to wrap up there. I think we've been about the 40 minutes, but let me show a couple things, then we'll get to some questions.
Somebody had a question. Let me ask it before it disappears. They want to know if you can recommend any secret places to kayak or get out on the water.
Great. Yes, actually, I have a whole chapter in Secret Atlanta that's called No, You Don't Hear Banjo Music. Reference to Deliverance. There are some awesome places to go paddling in Atlanta. Now, some of them are more, adventurous than others. Just the other day, I put in my kayak at Atlanta Memorial Park, just off Northside Drive, and I paddled to Fort Peachtree Park and then on to the Chattahoochee. And then now there's a takeout on the Chattahoochee. I was able to do about 6 miles of paddling there on Peachtree Creek and the Chattahoochee. And many people know you can put your boat in many locations on the Chattahoochee. The two places I'm going to recommend you paddle that are pretty close in. One is a section of the South River between Panola Shoals, which is a path trailhead, easy put in there, and then an easy takeout at Klondike Road. And it's also a very quick shuttle. It's like a 10-15 minute shuttle to get your car at either end. I've even done a bicycle shuttle, an Uber shuttle, and a running shuttle to do that little section. And it's a really pretty segment of the river. I once saw a wake of over 70 black vultures on that river. A wake is what you call a group of vultures, I've learned, which is a great name for a group of vultures. But yeah, I had never seen that many vultures in one place, and I just paddled right through this gigantic crowd, 70 black vultures, amazing. So the other location is on the Yellow River. And there's a really great section near Porterdale. And if you just search for Yellow River, Porterdale, you're going to find there's an outfitter who will even do the shuttle for you. And you put in, I think it's Browns Bridge Road, maybe. You put in there, it's about a 6 mile paddle, flat water, just fabulous. So those are my favorites right now.
Another question is coming from Daniel. He's a high school teacher and was looking for resources for wilderness activities. Online resources or apps that you can use to teach students about ecology, trees, and birds.
Yeah, great. Well, the birding apps, of course, are amazing, right? I hope you guys all eBird. I'm now on it all the time. My username is Ranger Jonah, and not naturalist Jonah, Ranger Jonah. But the Merlin Bird ID app, the Audubon app, they're really great ones for learning birds. And I think that one of the most fun things to do with students is to be doing the sounds, because from those apps you can be playing a bird sound and then giving them a way to practice, because they're hearing a cardinal or a towhee or a chickadee all the time. They just tune it out, right? So that's a way to teach them using apps. You get them on their phone. But by far my favorite is iNaturalist. I assume as a teacher you've probably checked it out, but I am really passionate about iNaturalist, and one of the coolest things you could do with kids is there's something each year, and you should look this up, called City Nature Challenge. And it's a kind of a game, I guess, where each city tries to see how many people can make how many people in your city can make observations of nature. Just snap a picture, click a button, and then it does some photo ID like technology, and it'll give you some suggestions of what natural thing you might have taken a picture of. But the thing I like about iNaturalist is it's a community of citizen scientists. So once you post your observation, right or wrong, somebody will take a look at your picture and then tell you what they think it is. So they either confirm that you got that observation right, or they might say, actually, I think it might be this. And I have learned so much from that community. And
Jonah, is there a particular iNaturalist? Apparently there's several.
really, my understanding is that there's one app called iNaturalist. It has
iNaturalist, right?
the letter I.
Like iPhone, like. Yeah.
Yes, like iPhone. Yeah. So iNaturalist, and the app, the logo is a little green bird. And so I think you'll be able to find it if you Google that. But it's a great resource to use with kids. I had one kid show up to an iNaturalist program that I led, and he saw it for a second, and he was like, "This is like Pokemon for nature nerds." And I was like, "Okay, yes, it is like Pokemon for nature nerds. I like that." So I found that kids get really into it because they love snapping pictures on their phones, but it's very interactive, which is nice. Thanks for that question.
Does anybody else have any? There's another. Esther says Esther Stokes, our chair of our board, says there's another app called Seek that's part of iNaturalist. Do you know what that's about, Jonah? Because I don't.
So I played around a little bit with it, and it's been maybe 2 months since I actually looked at it, so I don't recall it. But you should look it up. Just Google that. It's Seek, S-E-E-K, and it's kind of like, if I recall, it like takes the technology one step further than with iNaturalist. Snap a picture, that's it. I don't remember all the details, but if you Google it, you'll find some articles about it. And I played around with it for just a bit, and for my use as a park ranger, it wasn't exactly what I was looking for, but I think it might be really great for using with kids. Good, thank you. And I don't need a picture of me up on the screen here. I'll stop my, yeah.
Sure you do.
Okay, all right, whatever.
I'm going to post one more time, Jonah, the information on how to purchase your book, but do you want to go through that one more time? Because normally we would have been selling this at our, selling this back of manuals.
Yeah, let me tell you 2 things that you can do to connect. One is, because I've not been allowed, because DeKalb County said, only absolutely essential employees, so I wish park rangers were 100% essential. I know we can do without a park ranger for a couple months. So I've been staying at home and sheltering in place. But what I've been doing is creating YouTube videos about me walking in nature near my house. And it's been really fun, honestly. I've just really enjoyed just like popping the camera up and sharing little tidbits. I've been sharing it with the senior centers, with the general public on social media, and with the DeKalb County virtual summer camp. And so if you want to see some of those, that's a way you can connect with some of the nature programs I'm doing. The YouTube channel is Ranger Jonah McDonald. You can just search on YouTube and you'll find the videos I've been making. And then the website for buying my book from me, you can always buy it from somebody else. But if you want my signature on it for what that's worth, you can order it from secretatlanta.com, and you can use, I made this little discount code, so I'll eat most of the cost of the shipping, 3 ship, and then it'll give you discounted shipping when you purchase there. So if you want to, and I'll ship them out pretty quickly to you. I usually get them out the next day. So I'd love to share them with you, and otherwise support your local bookstores, and at the very least, Amazon.
Well, thank you very much for coming today, Jonah. And everybody, we are recording this webinar, and so it will be, a recording will be up on our website, on our digital resources website, under the education tab at atlantaaudubon.org. Give us 24 to 48 hours to get that downloaded and back uploaded onto our YouTube channel. But Jonah, thank you very much for coming, and thanks everybody for joining us and being flexible with us. We appreciate it, and I learned some new places I'm going to go, so I look forward to getting out there. You all be safe.
Thanks for making this happen, Dottie. I really appreciate everyone. Thanks for the little comments. That's really nice. Bye, guys.